Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back from a very long break to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my punctilious co-host, Chris Rasick. Today, we have a very special guest. You may know him as @SaulSellStuff on Twitter, and he's the guy who absolutely murders Amazon to Amazon flips. He also runs the buybox.io. But today, we're going to be talking a little bit about storefront stalking. It's been a little bit of the talk of the town lately, and so we wanted to do an episode on it, the good, the bad, the ugly. Storefront stalking, it's one of those things that I've noticed some people absolutely love, and others absolutely loathe it. And personally, I think it's got a time and place, but I think that a lot of folks don't utilize it in the right way. And today, we're going to fix that. But before we start the show, you know the drill. This show isn't free. We may not hide this behind a paywall, but that doesn't mean that you get it for nothing. If you find some value in this episode, please give us some digital DAP by hitting the follow button on your favorite podcast player on YouTube or sharing this with your friends or on social media. That gives us just enough of a dopamine hit to occasionally record a new podcast for you good people. So, Saul, I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us, man. Usually, I like to set the table a little bit, but your last show with us was the second most popular episode of the podcast. So I'm not really sure whether or not you need an introduction, but just in case, I was hoping you might have a short elevator pitch for what you do when it comes to Amazon.
Sure, wow. That's a little bit of an ego push there, and I appreciate it. But I'm sure many don't know. So, yeah, my name is Saul. I've been selling on Amazon since 2017. Chris Grant here actually was one of the people early on that I was following to kind of get a sense of what was going on in the Amazon world. 2017, I started Amazon while I had a full-time job, worked in corporate America, took home work with me, worked 50 hours a week, was young, but I was tired. And so in 2018, I took Amazon full-time. Did Amazon full-time for a year and a half, learned a lot, won a lot, failed a whole lot. And I think arguably is even more stressed than I was at my job because I didn't have the right things in place. Took what I learned at Amazon, started a couple other companies that are D2C space, and was able to then kind of go full force Amazon when I didn't have to rely on that income. So from 2019 to 2023, it was like full foot forward. We started the Buy Box, which Chris mentioned in 2019, which is really just a seller support. If you don't like Amazon seller support, you're going to like us. That's kind of the goal. We want to be the bridge between the two. Found my footing in A2A early on, do a whole lot of stuff RA, OA, but A2A has really been I don't want to say a godsend, but it's in something that I've really been able to put a lot of effort into and reap a lot of reward. Built a couple of really cool tools to help me in A2A that we made available publicly. And I just continue to ride that wave. Started on Twitter earlier this year, try to share my story and share what I've learned. Also, thanks to the Chris's here for giving me that nudge. And I'm just excited to be here. I love jumping on and being able to talk the talk. I feel like that. I have no one in my physical life. I can't go to the bar with someone and be like, let's talk Amazon all day. So I got to talk on Twitter, Discord, and then get to do these podcasts now and then.
It is nice to kind of have a group of people that you can chat with. I wish there were more locally that I could do that with, because I know as soon as I do it with any of the friends that we have locally, their eyes just glaze over.
Yeah, it's just like that face, and it almost, if you don't know FBA, I think there's just so many bad actors in the Amazon FBA space that are much more public than we are. That you just almost feel scammy. It almost feels like, you're about to pitch me something, and I don't want to be part of this conversation. And yeah, we're trying to turn that around, but it's a slog.
I hear that. So before we dive into the topic at hand today, I do want to pause for a moment, because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on what is a fairly hot button topic of the day. So we're recording this. It's almost the halfway point of Q4 already, which is crazy to be quite honest. It's November 7th to be exact when we're recording this, and we've all seen hundreds, maybe more. Maybe there's thousands. I know not everyone is vocal about it, but of Section 3 suspensions. There
Mm.
have been a rash of regatings of brands that we know don't mind third-party sellers. So Nike historically only goes after counterfeiters. Of course, every now and again they rustle up some legit, arbitrage sellers. Adidas doesn't seem to mind. Disney has historically never minded, but there are regatings happening across all of those brands, as well as a lot of uh, makeup brands, beauty brands, things like that. And it just seems like there's a lot of really weird things happening. Now, in my opinion, a lot of these weird things happen in Q3. And if this were all in Q3, it's a glitch. It's going to go away. Not a big deal. This is kind of the Amazon cleaning things up before we get to the prime season. But it being in Q4, it's making people a little gun shy. And so I was wondering if I could get both of your guys' takes on the situation. And do we need to be fearful? Should we just keep calm and carry on? Or what do you guys think?
Chris, I'm gonna let your seniority here. I'm gonna let you go first.
It reminds me of. Did you guys ever see the Twilight Zone movie or the episode where William Shatner is on the plane and he keeps looking out the window and he sees the monster kind of ripping? That's I think that's apropos for what's going on here. There's something on the wing, I think is the quote. My best advice, and it wasn't even advice, I kind of picked it up from you, Chris, secondhand, just by observation. I wasn't big on deleting products from my inventory, but I made it a point a couple months ago to actually start doing that and make sure the return window for the most part was closed, and actually start deleting stuff. And it was actually what prompted me to do it was how annoyed I got at Amazon Canada. Apparently you need a prescription for Band-Aids in Canada, because everything is, there's just violation after violation, especially in the health category. So I got sick of that. I got kind of worried about maybe my Canada account health affecting my main US account. So I went in and deleted a whole bunch of stuff. I took my catalog just and stripped it bare, basically to everything that was active. So I feel that has contributed to why I've been lucky that I haven't been affected, because in the past I have not been afraid to sell on a generic brand before. So it's carnage. It's a bloodbath out there, apparently, depending on how your social media feeds are tuned. Mm-hmm. I don't. As far as what's going on, your question of what's going on, I don't know. Do you think it's FTC related? Do you think it's the overall landscape that kind of maybe the timing isn't quite so convenient, but this needs to get done before legal proceedings get too deep?
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick second and thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
I don't know.
I'm glad I'm not the only one wearing a tinfoil hat here, because I spend what I think is probably a ridiculous amount of time thinking about Amazon when I'm not working. And that was one of the things that went through my mind. Is this because maybe the FTC's, everyone is saying that, oh, well, that case is, it's a kangaroo court. There's nothing really going to come of it. It's all garbage. But then I'm wondering, well, on, behind the scenes, are all the lawyers getting together and are they saying, well, let's do these things and these things, and maybe this just kind of quietly goes away after. And is this, whether it's a direct correlation or it's they've tuned a bot in some way to pick up on some things that they didn't necessarily mean it to. I don't know, but that is where my tinfoil thoughts were going as well.
Yeah, I don't think that's absurd to think that way. I think it's a shotgun approach to a much more delicate situation on their end. I am both fortunate in two capacities. Number one, I'm fortunate my account is, knock on wood, as of November 7th, fine. I did not get any Section 3s as of yet. I have also not been regated for anything. I have, my understanding is, though, in the last 12 hours or so, a lot of people that have been gated are now ungated. So it does seem like Amazon is rolling those back, which is really nice. I don't think they're going to admit fault, but at least people are able to jump back on those listings. As far as the Section 3s, it does not seem at this point that is an error. It seems Amazon is fully going through the process. If you received a Section 3, that you will have to argue your case and kind of be redeemed. However, because we do have this community, we have the buy box, I kind of get a peek inside a lot of seller accounts all at once because a lot of people share information. And so we've had a couple staff members, we've had a couple members go through the interview process already. And what it feels like is, I mean, if you're a legitimate seller and you have legitimate suppliers, and suppliers could be retailers, it doesn't seem like Amazon is necessarily caring if it's a retailer, Target, or Walmart receipt. What they don't want to see is, Alibaba or a random user with a fake invoice kind of looking thing. The interviews are pretty straightforward. They seem to be about 30 minutes long. What I think is funny is they actually, I don't know if you guys heard this, they test your knowledge, your seller central knowledge a little bit. So like they're asking people to do random stuff. There was one guy like, hey, can you go in and delete a credit card off your PPC? Like they just want you to prove that you have ever logged into Seller Central and kind of have an understanding of what you're doing. They ask you your suppliers, which is interesting too, because they don't require all of them. They ask you for some suppliers. So I think strategically, you pick the suppliers that you have the best relationship with, the ones that your invoices are really good for. And then they randomly choose an ASIN and they ask you to provide all the documentation. And that's been the policy, it seems like, for the 3 interviews that I've heard very in-depth on. And that at the end of that 30 minutes, you email them all of the receipts, all the invoices, and usually within 4 hours, you have your answer. And every person that I've witnessed go through the interview has been cleared. The most interesting one was someone that actually got cleared today. His invoices were it was a legitimate supplier, but that supplier had changed their website. So the invoice is no longer loaded. Like essentially, he kind of lost access to proving that the supplier was who they were because their website had changed and Amazon couldn't prove that they even existed. So what Amazon did is actually they just discarded all of that SKU. They said, hey, we're going to throw it all out because you can't prove it's real, but your account's fine. So it seems like they're still trying to like push sellers through best they can. And I'm thinking maybe they didn't anticipate the amount of interviews they were going to have to do. And so it's a little bit of like, well, we have a busy schedule. Let's clear it up fast as we can.
That's interesting. It's unfortunate that they lost that stuff because by throwing out, I'm guessing you meant they've disposed of it.
They disposed of it. Yeah.
Yep. So that sucks, but the account is more important than the single SKU. Yeah. So
all disbursements were sent out today financially, which is obviously the biggest thing that people are going through while you're waiting for all this. Is like most people can't get paid, which is just air on air, and that just hurts. Although interestingly enough, depending on your Section 3 email, some people are still getting paid. It really depends on the language in the email and if it's ASIN specific or account specific.
Yeah.
So it seems funky.
And I've seen, I know there are a couple I'm dealing with at the moment or trying to help with where, one of them is a related account. Those ones are my least favorite. And because they're very, very difficult to prove when Amazon won't give you any information. It's what I was suspended for. Unfortunately, I was able to fight it, so I'm trying to use some of the same tactics to help them. And then the other ones are, for suspected counterfeit,
Yeah,
and it's
which seems
just
to be the
taking
popular one.
forever. So, um, in your guys' opinion, is it just a matter of, hey, here's a little come to Jesus moment, and you need to make sure that if you're not already doing it, that everything is in order and continue on as normal, or is this is kind of a writing on the wall situation?
I mean, I certainly don't think it's a writing on the wall situation, but I also think we've been around long enough to see not this exact thing play out, but other things that everyone in the world was like, Amazon is dying and they don't want us here. So I don't think that you should stop selling on Amazon. I certainly think that if you don't already have your ducks in a row, as far as a process in place for your receipts, for your invoices, for all of that, you should, regardless. Because even if these interviews are going very easily and very well, Amazon is still choosing one ASIN. They're still going to ask you for some amount of information, and you need to be able to provide that. But I would say like this is the opportunity to really think about what you want out of Amazon as a whole over the next 10 years. I don't think that people will be able to sell on Amazon in 10 years. I think Amazon will be, here. Truly, I think Amazon's just going to be here. I don't really know if there's an expiration date on the Amazon marketplace, but I think very few people want to put all their eggs in that one basket long term, and especially because a lot of the people that at least we see on Twitter, right, are younger. I would say 19 to 25, and I think that's the perfect age to like crush it on Amazon because you don't have a whole lot of risk in life. But I would want to plant that seed in these guys when they start wanting to have kids and mortgages and other things that it can, diversification is not a bad thing. And so like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that you ultimately want out of the money you're making? You treat it as a cash flow business, which it is. If it's real estate, if it's a private label brand, if it's other things, even if it's just selling on Walmart and other marketplaces, that would be my only. If anything, I'd want this to nudge people in that direction, because it can be really, really scary. It's nice to trade a 9 to 5 for the freedom of Amazon, but really, you're there's arguably sometimes more security in a 9 to 5 than there is, waking up tomorrow and all of your money. Not only is all of your money gone, all of your product is stuck. Like it's such a different thing, and it's just a reality that we have to be, we have to acknowledge. And so it's nice to start separating some of that.
Amazon sort of has these golden handcuffs for us a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, so, yeah, I would agree. I don't think the writing is on the wall. And I saw someone, there's a guy who's pretty popular on Twitter and very into private label, and he's like, 2 years and arbitrage is gone. And I just happen to say, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, if I'm not mistaken, marketplaces since the dawn of the internet, at least the consumer side of the internet. I don't mean what they were using, in universities or anything, but once the internet actually hit people's homes, marketplaces were one of the first things on the internet. We've had Yahoo stores, we had eBay, Amazon, and all these other iterations of marketplaces, and so in one way or another, am- arbitrage is not going anywhere. It's been around forever. Uh, I do think that Amazon is one of those companies that's probably going to be around for the next 50 or 75 years in some manner or another. It seems like one of those generational companies. And their marketplace, heck, their entire strategy from when they were created has been the long tail. And you cannot do that without arbitrage. Wholesalers can't do that. Private label sellers can't do that. And Amazon first party cannot do what makes Amazon so powerful, in my opinion. And I know that everyone's like, oh, well, we do 100 million on Amazon and we only have to carry these 50 or 100 SKUs. But the thing is the reason people come back to Amazon is because that weird thing that you need at 3 o'clock in the morning is just a search away, and then it's 2 days shipping. and you don't have to worry about it coming from, some weird guy in his basement who's going to ship it to you in a pizza box from eBay. Uh, so I don't know. That's my opinion.
I think Amazon has too much riding on third-party sellers. I mean, we make up, what is it, up to 65% of
Yep.
sales on the marketplace overall. I think from a seller perspective, I think we end up with a whole lot of more skilled sellers, even if that number drops a little bit. My question is, what do you guys, in a nutshell, what do you think prompted this? Is this an assault on counterfeit products? Is this, because they're not shutting down the ability to make listings, but yet it's a whole bunch of sellers who made bad listings, and then other sellers who jumped on those that seem to be getting hit from. Seems to be a lot of this. What is the spark? What is Amazon's goal? What triggered this whole action, in your opinion?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't think it's. I mean, I think the generic listings absolutely are part of this. I don't think they are the root of the problem, because I think a lot of these people were on fully legitimate branded listings, even some that Amazon was a seller on. So I do think, to the earlier point about the tinfoil on this, I think there is definitely a strategy here to show someone in some future proceeding proof that they tackle inauthenticity. And this is what they did about it. And this is their policy in place. And they conducted 10,000 interviews, and just like, this is the thing that happened. But what actually set it off, it's hard. It's hard for me. It would be pure speculation. I think it was probably one thing that was legitimate that they just took the wrong approach at, and a lot of good people got caught in the crossfire.
Taking a chainsaw to a splinter is the way I described it to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I whenever this kind of stuff happens, I really do try to go through the thought process of what could, and I know that I'm not as smart as the C-suite at Amazon, but I do try to put myself in their shoes and think through what could it be. And the only thing I could come up with is there's got to be someone somewhere that they need to show some level of, we take this seriously, just like Saul said, we don't deal with, with counterfeits. We're trying to protect the consumer. Because I would imagine at the end of the day, while the FTC might say nice things about sellers, I think in reality they're much more, they're going to have a much stronger case against Amazon if they come at them from the consumer aspect, because that's just a much larger crowd. Easy to get them in a lather about Amazon being this big bad bully to the little guy. I mean, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. But like Saul said, it's just speculation.
Yeah, I guess that I'm guessing that they ran out of pizza when they got to the actual execution portion of this. Maybe I wish they would have ordered a third one for this topic.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's the pudding of Amazon. I mean, that's like, we've seen it so many times. We've seen it so many times where Amazon just like does something incredibly blanketed, and you just get swept up in it. And that's why it's no need to freak out, but just understand the reality of the situation. I also say, my opinion, confidently, this is no brand. No brand did any of this. There's no brand behind the scenes that was like, "Hey, Amazon." I think I've seen that online. I'm like,
Yep.
there's too many brands affected here. It's too convoluted. Like, I don't think any brand has the pull to do this, nor do I think
And
Amazon would
you
have listened.
well, you'd be talking about brands all coming together at the exact same
Yeah.
time. There's probably been at least 25, 30 brands that we know of that
Mhm.
this has happened on. And there's just, I don't know, there's just no way they'd all work together in concert to try to, get everybody from selling their brands on Amazon. Uh, I don't think that's the case
Yeah.
either.
And then why hit some people and others? Like, again, like I'm on some of these brands and been unaffected. So yeah, I truly think it's somewhat random, or there is a common denominator that we will never see. maybe there is
Hmm.
something on the account side that's linking these people that's just arbitrary to Amazon, and you've done X number of sales in the last 21 and a half days, like just some totally random thing.
If we've all been protected because we've all been on this podcast, I just want to say you're welcome, and you're welcome to everyone else who's ever been on the
Yeah,
podcast.
it's a poll underneath this podcast. Like,
Right.
how many of you have been affected? And listen,
Um, now, I want to say one last thing, and then we'll get to a happier topic. And I know that I'm wishing for rainbows and sunshines, and I'm not going to get it here, but it would be nice if there was better communication. Excuse me. Um, just a little something that was straightforward, and I don't know what the reasoning is that Amazon is such a black box when it comes to communication with sellers. I get keeping trade secrets. I understand, making sure that you're not tipping your hand to the competition or anything like that. But, when we're called partners, I'm not sure uh, why they can't be a little bit more forthcoming. And I think that they would do themselves a huge service if they would do that on occasion.
Yeah. Well, we're partners when we need to be their partners, right? That's a
oh yeah, we open our wallet.
definition
That's
changes.
yeah, we of course carry the brunt of the risk, as we all know. So that is
Yeah.
just the reality.
And I
But
wouldn't be a bit surprised if there are people within Amazon, excuse me, saying the exact same thing. Like, think about all the people who are getting these requests. Like, we mentioned, I've got a couple counterfeit without test buys, which in the past I've been able to take care of pretty easily because I'm good with my documentation, and maybe 1 to 3 tries and it's done. Right now, I've currently got one that I am on my 26th try.
oof.
And funny thing is, it was a health supplement, and I bought 2 different flavors. I got a counterfeit without test buy for each one of them. One of them was I won the appeal after 3 tries, and then this other one, the exact same invoice. I bought them both at
Hmm.
the same time on the same invoice. The other one is I'm on try 26 and counting. So, and obviously it's I feel like I'm just getting rubber stamped. Like, oh, here it is.
Yeah.
I don't, I feel like nobody's actually reading it, and no one's actually considering the merits of whether it's counterfeit or not. So that would tell me, and that's not the first time, but it tells me that I think on the back end, Amazon's probably overwhelmed with
Mhm.
the amount of paperwork and the amount of follow up that they're having to do with everything, whether it be counterfeit without test buys, the section threes and whatnot. I think they need to clear stuff off their desk as fast as possible because
Yeah.
they have more work than they have time right now. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Amazon employees were like, you know what, I wish we would have gotten a heads up about the section 3 stuff. Like, I don't have time for an interview or whatever it may be. That wouldn't shock me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have spoken with some people who have worked at Amazon in the past, and have gone on to other things, but during their time at Amazon, many of them, especially if they worked on the retail side, many of them were encouraged to go and open up seller accounts and sell some things on the platform. And some of those folks have gone on to quit Amazon for their Amazon business. And I'm sure that those people are probably those folks who would have. I mean, I certainly hope they weren't just kissing their boss's rear end and saying, no, everything's perfect. Don't change a thing on the platform. I would hope that they were piping up and bringing these kind of things up. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
We'll
anyway.
see. It would be nice if Amazon did what eBay does. I mean, eBay is much smaller, but like the eBay Open and their like whole conventions they have where you can actually go talk to C-suite and bring in the top sellers to have
Mhm.
tours and actually be the voice of the seller. That would be, I don't know. I don't see it happening, but it would be very cool. And then the last thing I'll say here is I think Amazon may have overextended what they thought the account health insurance program was meant to do, because it doesn't seem like that has really mattered in the
No.
slightest here. So I think there were some people who were like feeling a little more secure because of that. And another reality check, unfortunately, is that you never can quite trust um, security, regardless of what they say, because people with 1,000 score getting Section 3 and shut down same day.
Yep. We've been talking about kind of a heavy topic, but I want to switch gears a little bit to maybe some ways we can help people make a little bit more money, especially on this back half of Q4,
Mhm.
because we are coming into, and it already really is, but we are really coming into the heavy FBM season. I prefer to call it MFing season. I think that rolls off the tongue a little bit better. But you can make a ton of money between now and Christmas by merchant fulfilling.
Yeah.
And I think that you can use storefront stalking to do that quite well. And so let's kind of break this topic down. So, Saul, for the uninitiated in the crowd, or the people who are new sellers, can you explain what storefront stalking is, what the science behind it is, and why it can be helpful to an Amazon seller?
Yeah, of course. And I love this transition because it shows that we are still selling on Amazon. Like, that's to go from the heavy topic to the light topic. Like, we're not quitting the platform, and I don't think there's any need to run and scream into the forest. Um,
Hmm.
so storefront stalking in a nutshell is leveraging arguably other people's work to benefit your store. And so what you're doing is you're finding other sellers that are selling similar type products, or at least sourcing in similar ways. You don't want to find someone that has some resource that you can't possibly obtain. But these are generally OA, RA sellers who can go to the same stores that you can. And what you're doing is you're kind of taking a peek at their store, and you're doing it a lot. You're doing it routinely. You're seeing what listings they're popping up, and you're saying, oh, that's a great product. Either I wouldn't have never thought of that, which is great. Like, if there's opportunity to go buy that exact same product and sell it, that's number one. But number two is just like, it's kind of like a leads list. It's like, I'm going to rabbit trail off of what they're thinking. I've never heard of that brand. I've never heard of that product, but clearly this person is doing what I'm doing and they're buying that. So let me go explore what other things I can buy in that general direction. There's a lot of ways to do storefront stalking, but I think it's a really, really nice way to create a foundational piece of your business, particularly early on, to get you exposed to a lot of brands and a lot of products. And then once you figure out your exact like niche or how you want to tackle Amazon, or you're making some money, um, it can be really nice to actually leverage to find specific leads. And to Chris's point, like, this is the season, that the MFing season, um, is the time where you can really take advantage of it, where it's like high volume listings that people jump on. You get notified right away that someone that you follow is on this new listing. You're like, oh great, I want to go see if I can find this product myself. You buy it, you sell it, you profit. It gets a lot of hate, but I think there's lots of really nice ways to do it strategically to make you a lot of money and not tank a listing, right? I think that's what people are always concerned with, is like everyone doing this, and every listing then having a million sellers because we're all just piggybacking off each other. But that's
Right.
that's a way to do it. That's not really the way that we would hope and strategically plan to do it.
Yeah, I, I agree. I especially, yeah, I'm a big fan of rabbit trails, and I was actually storefront stalking earlier today because we run a Q4 group, and I provide leads every single day of the week for those folks, and one of the ways I do that is I'll do some storefront stalking. We'll do some manual sourcing. We use software. There's no limits to how we'll source, and I came across something that I'd never even I didn't know existed, which is it's super concentrated uh, protein, like a protein drink, and it's specifically for people who are not able to really eat solid foods. And of
Hmm.
course, one of the problems when you can't eat solid foods is a lot of times juices and things like that. It's going to be carb heavy. It's going to be sugar heavy. You're missing out on a lot of the proteins that you need. I've known this from other people I've known to be sick in the past, or they were just drinking regular old protein shakes. But those still often don't have enough protein in them compared to what you might need to get on a daily basis and how much you would need to intake. So they make these little shots that are just 1 ounce that have 15 grams of protein in them. And they sell them in several different sizes, several different varieties. And because I found that little protein shot, I was able to go and find a few other brands and a few other sizes that were profitable. And I would have never known about this kind of product. I know about Fairlife protein shakes or all these other brands. Never seen this kind of medical product that's high protein in such a small
Yeah.
delivery system. And so I think that's the kind of thing that Storefront Stalking does for you more than anything else, is it really just opens up your eyes to, oh, I don't just have to sell Nike shoes and socks. I can sell all these weird things that Amazon has available, some of them that people buy in fairly high quantity.
Yeah, we talked about it. That's interesting. That protein thing. I have a family member who had bariatric surgery, and she struggled to get the amount of protein that she needed. And the problem was she just instead of a full stomach, there was just a pouch. So actually taking a protein shake, while good in theory, she only had so much capacity to swallow it and digest it. So that's interesting. And we brought up we've talked about it before on one of our lead lists, the travel Eucharist, the religious supplies, and there's a whole market of where people need travel religious supplies, and it's, I'd never even thought of it. I've 12 years of Catholic school. I never thought about a mobile delivery system, but there's a whole market there, and that opened up a whole bunch of rabbit trails, and there was a whole bunch of profit to be made there. So yeah, I think, and I still remember when I first started, I took the very first OA challenge, and as a new seller, at least me, I don't know if this is common or not. I feel like it would be, but you want to see other people, like you want to know what other people, and over the shoulder is very attractive type of training when you're new, because there's so much information that you get hit with, but yet so much possibility. So you want to figure this out as soon as possible, and you get a little over eager. So being able to actually look over the shoulder of a more seasoned seller is very, very valuable. You want to see it in practice, because it can be such a foreign concept. So storefront stalking for me, it almost it provided extra reps, and vicariously, obviously, because it's not me, but it was essentially the over the shoulder kind of training that I really wanted to use, and it was very, very useful. A lot of stuff clicked by being able to storefront stock and see other stores and kind of reverse engineer how to do this.
Yeah, that's the confidence. I mean, early on for me, it was a confidence boost for sure. Because we live in a bubble. You live in a bubble of however you learned. Maybe YouTube, maybe you bought a course, maybe you joined a group. But for a while, it's just going to be the same 10, 20 people that you're surrounded by. And you will tend to lean towards whatever they're sourcing or kind of the methods that you learned from them. And I think storefront, at least for me at the very beginning, I was all toys all the time. And storefront stocking to other toy sellers showed me like, oh, this guy's selling number 2 yellow pencils. That never crossed my mind. Like some of these other categories, it just never dawned on me that there would be profit there. I was stuck in a loop of like profit comes with exclusivity, and I had to buy exclusive toys or clearance products to make profit. And once I saw people selling like everyday products, I'm like, these never go on clearance, or like rarely, and these are not exclusive. Like I'm missing something, and just being kind of in front of hundreds of thousands or thousands of these products that were proof that people were finding them somewhere. Like I'm the kind of, I think a lot of Amazon sellers are like that. It's like if I see someone and they can do it, I feel like I can do it. Like I don't think I'm particularly smart, and I figured it out. So it's like storefront stocking is proof. It's proof that other people are finding these products somewhere. And I'm like, I'm gonna find them, and I'm gonna make a living of this. If they can, I can. So that mentality for sure.
So, can we talk about maybe you guys both have more time in the industry than I do selling on Amazon. So, can we kind of walk through the evolution of storefront stalking? How's the tech and or methods changed over time?
Chris, you want to talk about the name Storefront Stalking? I mean, like we're talking here, we're sitting here with some of the OG of Storefront Stalking.
So, the name, before everyone knew what it was, I mean, I don't know what it was called before. Well, Nate, coined the term or bought the domain Storefront Stalker. Uh, I, heck, I don't know. Maybe it was called that, before, and he just was able to grab that domain. But at first, it was manual. You know, you'd go and look up someone's storefront, and then you just gotta go through everything piece by piece by piece, and then Storefront Stalker came out, which was one of the first softwares that I ever had. It was actually that came out after Tactical Arbitrage, kind of as a bolt-on for Tactical Arbitrage, where you go grab all these ASINs from storefronts and then toss them into Tactical Arbitrage. And then Tactical Arbitrage built that into the software. And then, further on down the road, there's been scrapers and, automatic alerts and all kinds of things uh, that have come out. And I don't know, that seems to be where we're at now. There are scrapers, there are alert systems of all kinds, so that
Yeah.
you can be notified immediately when Amazon receives someone's new inventory, and you can kind of go take a look at it before anyone else has the chance. Um, but that I don't know. Am I missing anything there?
No, I mean, I don't think you're missing anything. When you kind of talked through my process over the years, manual. I mean, Keepa was in there for me.
Hmm.
Once I understood the power of Keepa, I was like, I'm never going to Amazon.com again. Like if I could just go into Keepa and look at someone's storefront on Keepa, at least I was getting more information faster than if I was just going manually. But TA at the time was probably the way I was getting most. It was because it was just more the most automated thing that existed to not only pull in listings, but also then just immediately try to find them on the thousand stores they had in their database. That felt like a cheat code, and I felt like no one was doing it. I don't know. It was just like a thing that no one was really talking about at the time. At least the TA part of it.
Hmm.
Chris, I'm sure you were, but like in the groups I was in, it didn't exist. And then I would say it's like a lot of industries. I think there's like from zero to two, there's like just immense evolution, right? Like once someone is like, oh, this thing could work, I'm gonna try it, and then it just goes through this crazy evolution of like nothing to something that's really practical and cool. And then after that, it tends to like just kind of get stuck. I feel like the jump from manually looking at someone's Amazon storefront to being able to uh, export ASINs automatically, import them into TA, and search 1,000 stores. That's a massive jump.
Hmm.
I have not quite that jump has not happened for the second time. I think right now, to your point, we're at the place where we've created or what exists in the market is well, it's automated. It's generally Discord based. We're going to like look and check um, ASINs that people have found in their stores, and we're going to send you that data automatically every whatever hours. And then it's still kind of a very manual process at that point for you to go find them on Google, reverse search it from different stores. There's no like true database or like analytical portion of the business. It's just very speed on demand. Hit me in the face with it.
Hmm.
Uh, so I do think it's a little bit ripe for an upgrade, but um, I think you kind of yeah, you nailed the trajectory at least in our world.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. I think, in my opinion, tactical arbitrage is still good for. I
Mhm.
like to call it the shotgun method of storefront stalking, where rather than picking one or two storefronts, you maybe grab 20 or 30, and you just kind of throw as much data against the wall as you can, and see what sticks. Um, but there are also inefficiencies there that need to be handled. For example, that only gives you the products that are profitable right now. That doesn't give you the products that might be profitable in the future. And one of the things I always tell people is, in my opinion, I don't think there's any such thing as kind of a wasted lead. In my opinion, if you know where to source the product and you know that it sells on Amazon and other people are selling it, then it must have been profitable at some point. So now it's just your job to find out, well, how do I make it profitable? Do I need to wait for a sales cycle? Do I need to dig deeper for a coupon code? Do I need to find another location that they were able to find and I wasn't able to on page 3 or 4 of Google? And so you kind of miss that with tactical arbitrage, but you can do that, manually or with Keepa or something like that. I don't know. There's so many ways to do it, and I think do storefront stalking well, without necessarily feeling like you're taking advantage of just one particular seller. That
Certainly.
that maybe the people who get upset about it probably should think about it from that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we see on again, Twitter is kind of the three of us, our social domain. I feel like what we see on Twitter is like the oh, you're going to storefront stock Nike socks, things that like ever goes back to our early conversation of like just using it as an opportunity to get ahead and gain knowledge. I think when used correctly, you're not taking listings, you're being opened up to more products, and you can make, I think, a very sizable revenue. I'm confident that someone out there who's either listening to this or maybe isn't, but hopefully is, makes substantial money. 7 figures, I think, just storefront stocking, or that's a part of their portfolio, but it's a very large part. Because again, I think there's just so many layers to it, and when people think about it, it's just like a one-off. Like, oh, you're just, to Chris's point, you're looking over my shoulder, but I didn't ask you to, and so you're just kind of stealing from me in a sense. And yeah, certainly could, but I don't think anyone strategically or thinking about it from the right direction is going to just blindly buy everything that you buy. They have to, you have to think about it, differently. And that's how you're going to get ahead.
I think anybody who thought that they should just buy blindly from a particular storefront that maybe they've done well with, I don't know. I think that they're going to set themselves up for disaster eventually. And the reason I say that is, if I find a storefront that's really good to stalk, and then I just say, you know what, I'm just going to let this person build my business for me. I'm gonna do this on easy mode. Well, eventually they're going to realize that you're on every single listing that they're on as well. And if they're, in what my opinion is, if they're a good business minded person, they're gonna start saying, okay, I know what's going on. I see this person on 80% of the same listings I am. They're very likely just copying what I'm doing. So now it's time for me to figure out how to become unimitatable. Is that a word? I don't know.
If you can spell it and define it, it's a word. That's
Yeah.
my life.
So, and good Amazon sellers, people who've been around for a long time or plan to be around for a long time, they will figure that out. How to do that?
Mm-hmm.
How to take someone else's margin and turn it into their opportunity, if I can quote Jeff Bezos. So, well, let's talk about this then. Are there any characteristics of a storefront that maybe you would look for when you want to try to find a storefront to stalk? Any common characteristics anyway?
I mean, my goal, right, is just similar to everyone on this that's listening, should be to focus on the OARA sellers. Unless, I mean, if you're a wholesaler, I could see value in overstocking other wholesale sellers if you want to just kind of try to reverse engineer their suppliers. But for me, it's going to be OARA. I tend to start with my own listings, and I think a lot of people would do the same. I know where I purchase my products. I know the stores, and I want to see who else is shopping there. Because if they're shopping there, I like to think that they're like on the path of like profitability. At least they kind of have a sense of they're buying similar products to me. Maybe we're on the same level or the same playing field. I'm obviously ideally shooting for someone that has positive reviews, like is selling real products. I love people in that like 50 to 500 review range. Generally like a pretty decent OA RA seller, but not mega. Their moat isn't too big for me to overcome. Um, and when I start with people on my listings, I mean, I have 160 or so listings right now. I mean, that would be a ton of sellers. I also, depending on the season, I'm looking for FBA or FBM sellers. Um, I still really like store exclusives personally. Like I'm still like a toy kid at heart. And so like if I see you selling like a Hot Topic exclusive toy, like I'm probably gonna add you to my list because I also like sourcing a Hot Topic and I like the way you're thinking. Um, and so I want to see like, is there a product I'm missing at that store? Like I source there all the time already. Like what am I missing? And then what other stores are you sourcing at that I like should be looking at? Because again, I kind of use it as a what am I missing as a overall sourcing method as opposed to like a single SKU. There's lots of single SKUs I'll buy, but I to answer your question in shorter, mainly people that are selling the same products as me. Rabbit trail from there to find other like products that are interesting. Find people on those listings and then repeat the process. Those people have to be selling for some extent of time, usually at least 50 reviews. And ideally, I like at least 50 listings. I want some variety in the products that people are pulling in. And then from there, it's just me tackling the data to find the profit.
I like that. Now, I'm going to bring up a couple of other methods that I've used in the past to find storefronts. I especially like the you know finding other storefronts that are selling on listings like you. I can't remember who I said this to the other day, but I mean it's impossible to not overlook something while you're sourcing. And your example, Hot Topic, um, I know that they have very recently had some sales. I sourced those sales myself, but I know that I overlooked something. There were a few thousand items on sale during a pretty good sale. So I know that there's something I missed that someone else will have picked up on, or whether it was because I was too lazy or I just didn't see something or whatever it is. Um, but I also uh, I like to use I like to use the products that I've done the best with in the past, and then I will throw those kinds of products or the data from the Keepa graph, the averages, into Keepa, and that
Mm,
will pull up, I don't know, maybe it's 10 or 20 ASINs, and then I'll start looking at the sellers who are on ASINs that are similar to what I would like to sell,
yeah.
especially if they've been very flat, in the buy box pricing. And then recently, I've been messing around with Smart Scout,
Mm,
and pulling
it's a
sellers
powerful
off of
tool.
there as well. It
Yeah.
is, um, and finding those sellers who are carrying 20, 30 different brands, maybe have 50 to 150 SKUs, have more than 50 reviews. You can get really, really granular with the kind of storefronts that you pull
Yeah.
with Smart Scout.
And listen, now you get me excited with Smart Scout because the location thing is a little wonky, but it is effective. And if you source outlets, if you live near an outlet, 1,000% Smart Scout will like help you find a couple sellers in your area that also source those same outlets.
Yep.
I mean, those are like reverse sourcing gold. Like they're behind they're literally walking through the same doors as me. What am I missing? Yeah, all day.
Being in Orlando, that map feature is pretty easy to use,
Yeah.
down by the outlets. 25% off your Smart Scout in the description of the video. No, but seriously, it is really powerful.
Yeah, it's overwhelming though. I mean, I do think it's a great tool and people should buy it for the price it is. But I also think probably I'm sure Chris, I don't know if you have YouTube videos on it already, um, or what have you. I think probably get a sense of what the product is. It's so much going on there, and you really want to be able to take advantage day one when you go in.
Hmm.
And I think that it's worth it. But similar to TA, there's a learning curve, and so take a peek.
I didn't mean to go down this rabbit hole, but by the time this episode airs, there will be the most in-depth blog post about how to properly use Smart Scout
There
over
you
on the
go.
blog. So
All right,
we're right in the middle of editing that in.
uh, and as since Chris and I here are helping you push it, we get 1% revenue, I think, from all the
That's
the
exactly right.
codes. So
Exactly
so
right.
yeah, everyone go use those. But yeah, there's so many tools out there that, and it's just similar to the Kiba conversation. I know we're getting off topic, but I just, it's something I try to drill into people. If you're already paying for the thing, use every last bit of it. And I think there are probably people out there paying for Smart Scout now and have never used it to help storefront stock.
Hmm.
And you mentioned Keepa. I mean, everyone pays for Keepa. Um, you when you kind of gave your example, it made me think of so I don't remember his I think it's Zach. Is it Altamir? There's the gentleman on Twitter who specifically focuses on discount products, discontinued. I'm sorry, discontinued
Hmm.
products. Um, super nice and a great follow. But what you can do in Keepa, and what I've started doing as well, is some shrewd Amazon sellers will update the title of Amazon listings and say discontinued in them. Like they'll make that little bit of FOMO for the customer, and you can filter these in Keepa, and you can find all these thousands of listings that have discontinued in the title, and grabbing some of those sellers is a really great opportunity too, because a lot of these folks, similar to Zach, they're buying products that are still on the shelves today. Like they're just ahead of the curve. They know what's being discontinued, or they know what's recently been discontinued, and we can kind of see very quickly what they're buying and what they're sourcing, and go run to your local store and see if you can find it. So I appreciate you said that, because leveraging Keepa to like narrow in on a very specific type of seller is such a like a cheat code.
Hmm. And you brought up Zach. He's a great follow. He's a really nice guy, and he's one of the more positive folks on Twitter.
Mhm.
And that's at Zach Altmeyer on Twitter. You should go throw him a follow. He's a good
Yeah,
dude.
totally saying.
Yeah, just speaking about the characteristics of the types of stores to stock, it's storefront stalking is great for education. And one of the things that I did is I wanted to get into more golf supplies, right? Because there's an ulterior motive for returns. Um, so in fact, unfortunately I just unloaded like 7 dozen golf balls that turned profitable again. I thought most of my supply of what I'll need for next season was covered, but I had to actually send those in. But
Feels a little better duffing them into the woods when they're returns, doesn't it?
oh yeah, because I have no idea where my ball's going. So the more I can stock up on, the better. But I found that I really like selling golf balls. Very easy to prep and ship. It's all geometric, and they fit in boxes great. Um, so I could actually use the historical offers tab on Keepa under the data section or the offer section, and I could see even sellers that weren't on current listings that had been in the past and whatnot. And I could kind of it really helped me find more golf related things, and substitute the word golf for whatever you might want to sell more of, as far as like specific niches like that. That's and it's funny that because I have a regular storefront stalking process that I go through, and it's amazing that if you do it enough, you can figure out, like, it's pretty easy to figure out who the lead list sellers are, because you'll see, the same product basically almost in the same position of every store for a while, and so okay, they're heavy on lead lists or whatever. But you can actually kind of start to figure out sourcing methods and skill level. It's like, it's basically
Mhm.
generalizing what you guys just said, but finding somebody who does a certain thing or finds certain stores, like the discontinued example that you guys gave. It's interesting how you can get a feel for, just looking through it through a storefront stalking lens.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and all this said isn't helping our case against the haters, which I do want to get into a little bit. I wanted to address the haters. Um, a lot of sellers don't like the practice. So first question is why? Why do you think they disapprove of the process. And then how would you? What are the counter arguments on why they might be wrong? Because I think the three of us are pro storefront stalking. So what would the argument be made to somebody who says we are unethical or whatever words they would choose?
I think we've touched on a number of them already, which I think we've touched on both areas, and we can kind of point them out in a clear way. I think the hate comes from a generalization of storefront stalking. I think that when people think storefront stalking, they think stealing leads. They think looking over someone's shoulder and just blindly buying what they're doing, or just following, wherever they go, and putting no of their own personal thought into the purchase. And what we've illustrated here in this conversation is if you're doing storefront stalking to a certain degree and you're being strategic about it, it's really less about seeing what you're buying and me buying it. It's really more about like understanding the type of products you're buying and where you're sourcing them from. And then how can I go and leverage that to source 10 more? Like I want, maybe I want your one SKU, but really I want 15. And I found those other 14 because you led me, right? Like through what you're doing, I kind of was able to use my own brain, my own strategy to figure out, oh, this is a great sale, or this is a great genre, or whatever. And to me, that's no different than any kind of arbitrage seller in the practice that they use, to find any product. You all do it. You all like go to a Macy's or a Kohl's sale, and you're just manually going through the products and you're buying things and you're sourcing, and it's the same process. I mean, I'm happy to sit here and say, like, I do disagree with the folks that are just going to blindly buy. I don't think that is the right way to do storefront stalking, and I think that is a detriment to selling on Amazon, in the sense of like, if you're blindly buying, you're probably not doing it with the right buy costs. You're probably going to come into that listing and potentially tank that listing. You're gonna you're kind of cutting off your own nose a little bit. So I think maybe it's just like we can get into more reasons why it's, I would say, counter, but to me, it always just feels like a very generalized hatred of you're buying what I'm buying and you're not thinking about it and I'm doing all the work. And I just don't think that if you're doing this correctly from a strategic level, that is what's happening every time.
I do think that, I don't know, I think that sometimes we as Amazon sellers think that there's, if we found the product, we found it at the best price from the best supplier with the best discounts, period. And unfortunately, it's just not true. In most cases, there is probably a place to get it priced better. Now, this will be a little pat on my own back. I'll try not to break my arm while I do it, but I pride myself on really finding some nooks across the internet that I don't think a lot of people are sourcing. College bookstores, that have an e-commerce footprint, and some of these other backwater places that people may not go and source. There's a lot of products that you can find from storefront stalking, and then by diving a little bit deeper than what your competition probably has, there's a way to be able to either make more profit or, be able to withstand price erosion that might happen from other people stalking their storefront and things like that. And so I think in tandem with storefront stalking, if you're using storefront stalking to be lazy, you're probably going to source lazy as well. And you need to either not storefront stalk lazily, or you need to not source lazily, because otherwise you're going to put yourself into a bad time.
I would entirely agree. I use there's always someone that got it cheaper line very often, particularly because we do see a lot of people that put their numbers up and they're like, what is this person doing? They're losing money. Like how could they, why are they selling it for this price? Yeah, sometimes they're probably losing money, but also other times they just bought it cheaper. And yeah, you just have to assume. You just have to assume that there's always someone cheaper.
Yeah, those are actually some of my favorite posts, because if you if you go back and look at some of the stuff that that Scott from BuyBoxer and Smart Scout has posted in the past when he was actively running, their Amazon account, uh, I mean, some people are playing different games too. Some people
Mhm.
are willing to take a 50-cent profit and a 5% margin in return for higher volume. When most arbitrage sellers, I think, are still stuck in uh, that ASIN by ASIN, unit by unit profitability rather than profitability of their entire business. Um, but that's a conversation for another podcast. So in that vein, the people who loathe storefront stalking is is there really any way to insulate your own storefront from being stalked? Because everybody likes to get the answers from the smart kid. Nobody really likes to be the smart kid not getting paid to give their answers away.
Yeah. I mean, there's some ways to reduce the likelihood that your storefront is stocked. I think there's two parts to that answer for me. It's the first part is how do we reduce the likelihood of being storefront stocked? And also I want to preface, even if you are storefront stocked, it's not the end of the world. I'm confident my store is, um, because similar to like when we teach people, like all of us in this call have been on calls and answered questions for new Amazon sellers. You've all tried to help new Amazon sellers, and you all know that when you teach someone something, it doesn't mean they're going to take action on it. And so I think just because your storefront's being stocked does not mean that the person stocking it is going to do anything with that information. Um, but the easiest thing to do is to, and I'm shooting like, I always enjoy these posts, so I'm going to see fewer of them. But people that just actively just share way too much information publicly about their listings or their store, and the argument would be like, wow, you're stalking me personally. You're going out of your way to like track me down on Google. And the reality is like, no, like I don't, no one looks, I mean, I don't know, maybe some people do, but I'm not going and trying to find your name legally in your store. But you posted, if you post a screenshot of, I sold this thing and this was how much profit I made, and here was the buy cost and this was the rank, it doesn't take too much effort on Keepa to find that exact product. Um, and I think people are surprised with how little information you need
Mhm.
to actually find a product on Keepa. So I would say if you want to share, wins on Twitter, I love that, and I think that you should, um, you know, try to blur or remove some of the more pertinent information. I think sales rank is a big indicator that we can use or that people use. I also think uh, it's so hard if you want to show profit. If you want to show profit, you kind of have to remove either buy cost or sell cost. You can't have all three of those be visible, because interestingly enough, fees, uh, seller fees are kind of like a fingerprint. There are actually very few products on Amazon that share the exact same dollar amount fee structure because of the
Mhm.
different categories and the different like everything. And so if you see that someone's fees were $6.73 and you see the sales rank just from that alone, there's good odds that you've narrowed it down to under 100 ASINs. Um,
Seller fees. I know that they're a data point in Keepa. Are
yeah,
they in Keepa Product Finder?
yeah,
Yeah, I thought so.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes it very
So
easy.
it makes it really easy. And so I would say, yeah, I don't do it anymore. Like it was an exercise, I think, that you kind of like want to be like, can I find it? Just for like your own keep exercise. Not something I do anymore, but I'm confident that there are people that when you post this on Twitter, they are doing that. They are finding your product. They are storefront stalking you.
Hmm.
Um, the flip side is your moat, how you're sourcing, um, and how actively aggressive you are with selling. Chris mentioned it. It's a mind shift, and it took me a long time to get there. Amazon is not a storage facility. When you're sending something into Amazon, it needs to be sent in to be sold. If you don't want to sell it right away, then don't send it in and hold it. And so, I think that by even if you are being storefront stocked, if you create an advantage of speed, everything that you buy and sell is like immediate. It's much more difficult for someone to like come in and make an issue for that listing. Um, A2A is a pretty, I love A2A for storefront stocking because usually we're buying products that are very limited, and it's not something to be like, there's no sale that we can just go back and repurchase from. So you're kind of insulated there. And then I think buys and holds. If you're buying something and holding it for 2-3 months and then sending it in and selling it, like a lot of people do for Christmas, people sit on Legos, people sit on other things. By the time someone sees what you're selling, there's nowhere to buy it. There's nowhere they can just go and buy it tomorrow. Um, my long answer to a very straightforward question, but
I like it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's ever noticed this or not, but I will occasionally share a Keepa graph on Twitter, and there are certain things that I make sure don't show up when I share a Keepa graph. Just to make it a little bit harder, to make it more sporting for anybody who
yeah,
might want to go out and find that
challenge.
particular item. Uh, so
But anybody who listens to this, like all they're going to post on social media is like, "Hey, had a good day on Amazon." That's it.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like it's going to
the end
scare
of-
people off.
right.
You know what? As far as insulating, I very early when I started selling, I work under the assumption that I am consistently my storefront will be stocked, and I came to grips with that, and I'm okay with that. Kind of piggyback the theory that you have, Chris, of wide, not deep. So it's if you're not going overly deep on anything, how bad can you be hurt, really?
Mhm.
If you're 10, 20 units into something tops, go ahead. I kind of I looked at it that way. And then, how you saw, like you said, how you source, lowering your buy cost and finding ways to become that person when you say, I assume there's someone that got it cheaper, be that person that got it cheaper. Because there are plenty of sellers, and again, you see the screenshots on social media. There are plenty of sellers who are content with Rakuten for cash back, and they're content with Honey for coupon codes. But there's more cash back than Rakuten. You're set. I always look at these people. They post their flexes of their quarterly Rakuten checks, and I can't help but think how much more they could have made. And then there's a definite art to finding coupon codes. If you're just going on the basic ones that Rakuten has you run, or Retail Me Not or something like that, you are missing out, because there's a lot more money. There are way better coupons out there. It's one of those exercises that is very much worth your time if you explore finding better coupon codes. I found.
I know everyone's just hoping you accidentally drop your secret source.
Yeah,
too.
I'm sitting here like,
No, no.
So that's behind the paywall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's one of the places I'm thinking of, Chris is right. There's some good stuff out. Maybe he's found something he hasn't shared with me either.
Oh.
I don't know.
Let's see. Oh,
You're cutting out. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. That's we'll have to move on to the next topic. So, in a more general sense, as far as storefront stalking goes, have you found certain categories are better than others?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer to it. I mean, I've been really into, and we'll see how many new sellers pop up my listings after saying this. I've been really into bike parts recently. I think like high-end hobbies
Mm-hmm.
or higher end hobbies. I don't fish, but I sell a whole lot of fishing reel, like in the spools. Like I think it's just I had no idea the amount of money that someone would spend on like very small pieces of product to fit into a much bigger hobby. And so I just go where I'm interested. And I think for right now, that's kind of where I've been interested. And I find a lot less competition. And I also find these ridiculously weird small stores that I've never heard of that are selling just like the middle of I don't even know what they're called, but like the specific gear on a bike, like very specific things that, or like individual pedals for $80-$90.
Yeah.
And then these random sites will have like a 50% off sale. And it's like, I'm one of 3 sellers in the listing. And so I've been attached to those sellers. I'm like, who are the big fish in this pond? Um, and I know a lot of them probably wholesale, but some of them aren't, and it's been interesting to just see what they've been up to. So I know, Corey's a friend of the podcast. I know he's like all into tools, and so like obviously
Mhm.
for him, he would just be like full in. And the same thing, I think there's a million tools that are super expensive that you've never heard of from brands you've never heard of. And so I kind of like I've been more into the obscure lately. I think for a long time I was very much into like toys because that's where I really liked in electronics. But I still these could come up, but the high end hobby, high end toy drones, like anything that's a little bit more expensive. Because I've been focusing this year on AOV for me, and
I like that.
I've been getting my. I will say, unrelated to Storefront Stalking. This is also like when you're selling very expensive or more expensive products, it takes a lesser coupon to make them worthwhile. And
Hmm.
when you're selling things that are $30, you kind of have to buy them at 50% off. When you're selling at $100, you could buy them at 30% off or 40% off, and still make more money than you would have selling a $30 thing, because the fees don't scale. I think like mentally
Right.
people are like stuck with that, but like fees scale on price for one, but the biggest fee is going to be the actual fulfillment fee,
Hmm.
and that is going to be a much higher percentage of the smaller priced products. And so I'm shooting for the 80, 90, $150 products lately because it's just more fun and it's honestly easier.
I
Yeah, that's a
I
great
love
point
that.
because I was back in even when I was working in retail, I heard a phrase that stuck with me, and it's basically along the lines of every store has 20% to take off. And
Ooh,
whether you're talking on the retail side or whether it's customer service, and you're trying to work a discount on a return or exchange or something like that. But that's always stuck with me. There's always 20% to take off. So that's a great point that you make. If you get into something, just an easy 20%, it's not that hard to find. If you're looking for codes and whatnot in sales, that could easily bring something higher dollar into your profitability, into your parameters that you're looking for.
Hmm.
yeah, especially if the $100 retail product is selling for 115 on Amazon, and now you're buying it for 75. You make $20. Now your ROI isn't where some people want it to be, but these are products that I have almost no returns on. These are things that people when they buy these things, they're buying them because they're either replacing one they already had, or because they know the hobby so well that they are meticulously like, I'm buying that. I've saved up for that. Uh,
Mhm.
and so it's been enjoyable to transition a little bit.
I think this piece right here might be one of the biggest takeaways of this entire show, uh, because it's not just bikes and that this kind of stuff is in. Now, I recently came across a niche that I know existed but never really thought about, and it was watchmaker tools.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot of those are very expensive, especially if they're specifically for higher end watches. Uh, and I don't know, they're just all sorts of niches like this, and I too I like replacement parts for higher end products. Typically for me, it hasn't been bikes, but it's been um, consumer higher end consumer products you have around your home. Uh, there's just there's so much money, and typically uh, the price is a little bit higher because it's got a better brand name behind it.
Yeah.
People are willing to pay for that OEM product over whoever is creating the Chinese version of it and selling it on Amazon. And you're a little bit more insulated from some of the price erosion of these three or four private label sellers creating replacement parts for them. So,
Microwave replacement parts.
yep.
Microwaves and ovens. I was saying for a long time I was on the inside of oven pieces, and those are great. And I also think I'm not really big into wholesale, but I have to imagine the more niche you get in some of these things, they probably get fewer wholesale inquiries from Amazon sellers
Oh, I would
overall.
imagine.
So I'm sure you have an advantage if you can make the argument because you're not one of 100 anymore.
Hmm. So, at uh, at what point would you coach an Amazon seller to say, you know what, it's probably time to start adding this sort of um, this sort of thing to your repertoire. It's time to learn how to storefront stock properly,
Mhm.
so that you can, get your reps in, learn how to do this, kind of see what people who have already blazed the path are doing, and things like that.
Yeah. I think it kind of depends on the seller. I don't think that I would comfortably suggest going and finding your own storefronts to stock until you understand what it means to be a good Amazon seller. Like, you need to have the tools to be able to assess the storefronts that are interesting from the storefronts that aren't. And
Mhm.
a lot of that comes down to how you are reading Keepa, how you're actively sourcing already. I don't think that you need to be making a ton of money. I don't think you need to be like months into it, but I think you need to have a firm understanding of what you would consider a good buy and what you want. And obviously, like, your kind of your own thresholds of prepping and all of the things that go into sourcing products. Because, I don't want to go storefront stock products that I have no interest in prepping or like have no tools or resources to do so. But once you have a firm understanding of what it means or what makes a good OA RA seller, and you already pay for Keepa, I think the first step to me is like just doing it manually. Like anything. Like when we tell people when they send their first shipment in, I want you to do it through Seller Central. Like, I think everything should be done pretty manual and pretty rudimentary at first, because that's going to get you to the place to understand the process, and then you're going to appreciate the tools a whole lot more later, um, once they exist. But to me, I don't know if there's like this like set threshold other than at least a basic understanding of what arbitrage and OA looks like, how to source kind of yourself, at least at some level. And then you can start like peeking over the shoulder of people once you've been able to determine if they're actually, more advanced than you. Because the last thing you want to do is kind of storefront stock someone who just started as well, or someone who maybe isn't making the best choices as a seller.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's important to understand why. Like we said when we talked about the detractors of storefront stalking. If you're just copying somebody, you're not learning anything. You're not taking anything with you out of that experience. And you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, what happens if this shuts off? This is a great storefront. They seem to
Yep.
be manually sourcing. What happens if they change their store name? And you lose their trail. What are you left with? It's the important thing to do is you have to be able to learn from this. You have to, I mentioned before, reverse engineer. Basically figure out what types of stuff. Be able to start identifying some things. Like I said, this person must be on a lead list or something like that. If you see stuff repeatedly come up, or um, this person is knows a sales cycle. That's another important thing that you can start to identify.
Yeah.
If you get to the point where you can identify sales cycles yourself, you're going to be able to see that in the data that you're receiving from storefront stalking. I think it kind of mirrors your own skill, and as you acquire these skills, I think that's probably a good jumping in point for storefront stalking once you know the skill yourself and can identify it.
I totally agree. I also know that we're looking at the clock here. I imagine that we're running out of time very quickly, and I don't want to cut off this particular topic, but I also want to make sure that we did, Chris, I'm sure it was already on your list, um, this time of year, just like a general strategy for Q4 in particular, so we're stocking and FBM, because
Mhm.
I think that's such an important thing to cover, and I think we have 15 minutes or less right now, so I really just want to make sure that we get to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What and that is a good thing to bring up because there is a ton of money to be made right now. We've talked about I know we've talked about hybrid arbitrage in the past, being able to find things online and go pick them up in store and sell them. Yeah. Is there anything you do differently when you know that it's time to take advantage of that last minute rush,
Mm.
and make the money off the guys who are waiting until a week before Christmas to buy their present?
Um, I mean, I'll also be very upfront and transparent. Like, so this year I have a warehouse. I have a decent sized warehouse, but I didn't previously. For 6 months I was living on a floor in a very tiny room. And then before that, like my life situation, not necessarily financial, but just like by choice, didn't allow me to do heavy FBM because I just didn't have the space. And I did a lot of FBM early on, and I'll do a lot of FBM this year. And I mean, to me, it's about trends. There's seasonal products that are always going to crush, and you can do that research today. You can use Keepa today to figure out what did really well last year. And if Chris doesn't already have a Twitter thread, and I'm sure he will, and or a blog. But when we're talking about like as we get much closer and closer to Q4, what I'm doing right now, I'm already doing that groundwork. So I've been taking pictures. I go to Target and Walmart multiple times a week. I've already taken a ton of pictures of toys and things that I think are gonna just, I'm gonna say pop off. I'm gonna be a little young for a second, but I think are gonna do very well. I'm also like aggressively looking at what is exclusive to different stores. You can already get a peek at Black Friday sales. So like a lot of places will put forward their Black Friday sales now, but you can also look at previous Black Friday sales. So go back and look at the pamphlets from last year, the year before, etc. Look at what did well from those sales. Look at the Keep It charts. Did it spike? Did it tank? Kind of get a sense. But I can say already, like there are a handful of products that nobody, like I don't say nobody's buying for resale, but they're on the shelf right now. They're dwindling, and I think they're gonna like be 3 or 4x come Christmas. And that's just purely from being boots on the ground, like in the store, and looking. And then as far as FBM, storefront stalking, I think right now what you want to find are active OA RA sellers, ideally RA sellers that are doing a lot of FBM, and you can do that through Keepa, right? We can specifically look at listings in Keepa that have a lot of FBM sellers. We can say, all right, and Chris, I know you have a thread in this, but let's look at listings that have increased in FBM sellers by 50% over the last 30 days or increased in price. And I want to follow those people. I want ideally something that pings and I can go buy it in an hour. And FBM, like the luxury, thanks to Twitter, everyone it keeps tweeting, I bought this thing. I'm still in the store. I sold it. I'm like, this is great because I know it's still available. Like, there's no moat there. Like you're in a store somewhere. I'm gonna go find it. And so I think that like that to me is like why storefront stalking in Q4 FBM is just like so nice because there's so many people that are listing and selling products that you can just readily go buy. You don't have to like hunt for them. Like they are just at your local, Ross or Marshalls or TJ Maxx, or you just kind of create this hit list of things that you're going to look for as I'm fighting a bug to get.
And oftentimes, because of the velocity, you don't necessarily have to worry as much about the price tanking.
Yeah.
I think that's what some people really worry about is they're like, oh well, that's already got 150 sellers on it, and my thought process is, oh well, but it's December 15th, it has 150 sellers on it, and it's ranked 5.
Yeah.
It can handle a few more sellers because the velocity is so high.
100%. I also think relative 150 is a lot, but it really isn't. Also, I mean, for people that are newer to Amazon or just like don't think necessarily this way, I don't care how many sellers I'm listing. All I care about is how many are within 5% of my buy box or my cost that I want to sell at. Because oftentimes you see listings with 150 sellers and 120 of them are like in a number sphere that you have no interest in selling at. Like they're waiting for some magical event to happen where the listing just jumps in price, and like we're content just fighting with the 10 sellers that are rotating in the buy box, and that's really you have 10 competitors at that point.
Exactly. Thank you. One of the I think an exercise people need to do if they haven't already, and you need to go to a product on Amazon, and you need to go to the buy box statistics, and then you need to sort by recency. So now here's the thing. Keepa cannot grab the data from every single regional buy box or for every single second or minute of the day. But this is going to at least give you an overview. Okay. And what you're going to notice is that, one, it's not always the lowest price that gets the buy box. And two, there are people who are going to get FBM in the buy box over FBA sellers at higher prices. and you're going to see what the buy box rotation actually looks like, rather than what everyone, I won't say everyone, I think what a lot of people think causes the buy box to rotate. Because I think that generally, either for those who are new or for those who don't spend, their every waking hour thinking about this kind of thing, they just think the lower the price, the more buy box share I'm going to get, and the data proves otherwise if you really dig into it. So please take a few minutes, look at the buy box statistics, sort by recency, and I think your eyes are going to open up quite a bit if you've never done that before.
And it'll make more listings more profitable. Things
Mm-hmm.
that you would have passed on. You're now curious about buying. I think we need a whole episode on Keepa. I would love nothing more than to do that, because I full heartedly agree. I think Keepa is amazing, but it's not gospel. There's so much that it doesn't know because it just can't physically possibly know. But people treat it as it knows everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, amazing that as much as we could talk about Keepa, people are still sleeping on it. So the one thing that we haven't talked about yet, we've gone all the way around it. The actual tools to get the storefront stalking done. We touched on it a little bit with the evolution conversation, but are there any tools that you suggest that would make it easier for sellers out there that are interested?
Yeah, I mean, I think as mentioned, I think you got to walk before you can run, and I never suggest anyone pay money for anything unless they understand why they're paying money for it and the value it actually brings them to their life. And so, in order to do that, you need to do a little bit of peeking manually. If that's Keepa, if that's going to Amazon itself, I think Keepa is probably a bit easier. Um, just go through the process, like look at some stores. Find your own store on Keepa, look at those listings, rabbit trail to other sellers on those listings, look at their listings, and just kind of go from there. Just see the value, understand the value of looking at stores first before you're going to pay anything. We mentioned if you already have TA, it's still built in, it's still there. You can still leverage their kind of storefront experience. It's not a stalker. It's not going to actively like refresh, but it's nice if you have just like a list of ASINs or a snapshot that you want to throw in there, and see what resources come back. And then after that, obviously there are some, Discord or kind of other related things that exist. They'll just ping you. Similar to when we went and built like a whole bunch of really cool A2A stuff. We have something in the works. I think that people who enjoy currently storefront stalking or are getting into it because of this episode and then see the value are going to really appreciate. And we're excited to like talk more about that in a future time. But in the meantime, I think what you need to do is understand why you should care, because some people maybe are going to use it and be like, you know what, this is cool, I see it, but I don't want to do it. And I'd rather you figure that out before you pay anyone money than pay something and then, be like, this wasn't for me. I kind of feel like I wasted. So I think starting with Keepa is what I'd recommend regardless. It's just the root of all good.
100. I love Keepa.
Yeah.
It's weird how much I think about Keepa and enjoy that software.
Yeah. And we should band together and make $1 billion and buy it.
Right.
Yeah.
Those guys would be tough negotiators. I think they know what they've got.
They've got one of one. Yeah.
Yeah. As usual, we like to end every episode with a quote. And it is unfortunate. We could keep going, but we are short on time. But this week's quote is gonna harken back to sort of the sour start we got with this episode. And this week's quote comes from John D. Rockefeller, and it's try to turn every disaster into an opportunity. That's not the kindest of quotes, and it could easily be taken out of context. Much like Warren Buffett's "When there's blood in the streets, there's profit to be made," or I'm butchering that quote a little bit as well. But yeah, I've actually already seen this play out. People have been regated, people have been suspended for a short time with Section 3s, And I have seen people band together and say, hey, I've got this product. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell it again. Would you like it? So there are opportunities like that, not to necessarily be a vulture to someone else's inventory, but to create some strategic partnerships, that come from these kinds of quote unquote disasters in the Amazon community. And I think if you're willing to think outside the box a little bit and figure out how, these kind of opportunities can be made into a sum positive, not only for yourself, but also for other people, I think that you'll be surprised at the profitable relationships that can be forged through these kind of things. So that's it for this week. Do you guys have anything else before we sign off?
No, so thank you for inviting me back. I guess I did something right. I'll find out if I did it again, if I get invited back for a third time. So
Yeah,
I'll cross my
absolutely.
fingers.
Well, I think we'll definitely have you back for a third time, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out today. Thank you guys for listening. That's the pod. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share it to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.